I need some intro music to play so I don't sing, to wait for this thing to catch up. All right, everybody, welcome back to another live stream in the South Coast Content Creators Group. We're trying something different today. We're calling it Story Time. Story Time with Uncle Content Marketer Matt. Fielding some listener questions, viewer questions, South Coast Content Creator Group questions. Let's share the old screen. If you haven't, well, of course you have because you're in this group, but maybe I'm using this video somewhere else in the world. If you haven't joined the South Coast Content Creators Group, go to southcoast.fm/creators. If you are a creator member already, thank you very much. Well, there's 65 of you, and if you want to invite more people, please share the word. Let your fellow business colleagues know that this is a great place to learn content marketing, a great place to network with others, so long as they're on the South Coast. And in today's episode, the question that was posted today is, Matt, could you please explain the difference between podcasting and posting videos regularly? What makes a podcast a podcast? And this is a fantastic question, and one that I will attempt to answer in today's story time, because I took this opportunity to create a blog post. And now you can skip this video if you don't want to listen or watch. You can just read the blog post, and I'll link it. Matter of fact, I'll link it right now for those of you that are watching. Let's drop this in the comments section here. I'm going to paste this in. Send that out. Actually, that was not the right way to do that. I think that worked. If not, I'll just post it below this video after the stream is over. But I used that question as an opportunity to create a piece of content, two pieces of content, in fact. One, this blog post. Two, this live stream, which is a testament to understand that everything is content in your business. Specifically, if you run a Facebook group, another community, if you collect user feedback, audience feedback, you have to look at everything as potential content. So, like the question is, what makes a podcast a podcast? We're going to answer that right now. Let's dive into story time. I'll read each section of this blog post, and then we'll break for questions. Or I will expand on each section. Here we go. If you haven't caught on by now, I encourage every brand or organization to start a podcast. Some research, like this article, are predicting that podcast listenership is going to reach over 85 million in the US alone by the year 2023. But the word podcast is so geeky, scary even. The instant I bring this up with business owners, their faces wash over like they just got hit with the flu right in front of me. It's the perceived time and complexity that hit them first, followed by the fear that no one will listen to what they have to say. But here's how my tagline goes. I think everyone has a great story to tell. And the question isn't who your audience is, but what you'll do with an audience once you have one. Read the full guide to starting your small business podcast by clicking this link. So many business owners who want to start a podcast or hear the word podcast and they're like, this is not for me. This is not what I do. I don't understand it. I don't know where to go. I don't think anyone would want to listen to me. That last bit, that lack of confidence, is something that is so wrong for many brands, especially brands that have been in business for many years, because people do want to hear what you have to say. They want to hear it in your voice, literally and figuratively, and they will tune in. And you will build an audience. So the question isn't, will they listen to it? They will. The question is, what will you do with an audience once you have accrued one over time? It won't happen instantly for most people. 6 months, a year. What are you doing with that audience? How are you cultivating, growing an audience? What kind of value are providing? How are you bringing it back to impact your business? Very important pieces. Let's continue. So what makes a podcast a podcast? Well, first, throw the word podcast right out of the window. The most important lesson here is that we're constantly broadcasting to our audience. And this can come in form of a traditional podcast, a video series, or consistently producing Instagram stories. The goal we want to stretch for is consistently creating content that reaches our target audience. And why? If you've been in business for any stretch of time, you know that, well, if you build it and they will come, it's just a long lost folktale. In today's world, the act of going into business does not mean you will get customers. Launching a website will not bring you more sales. Creating a series of blog posts will not instantly bring you more traffic to your website. We need to encourage engagement, educate our customers, and keep them hooked into our brand. It's a connection of all areas of content that make this possible. Broadcasting is towing the line of the entire company. So what do I mean by that? I mean is you don't have to do the traditional sense of podcasting. What we want to do is get into a consistent state of creating content, no matter what that platform of content is or where that platform exists. It should be consistent. It should be towing your brand or company line. It should be engaging customers. It should be engaging customers to bring them or audience members to the next step, right? If you're doing just video, why are you doing video? Where does that lead to? What kind of value does that provide to your customer? You don't need to do the long form, 45-minute, 3-hour, 15-minute traditional podcast. It could be Instagram stories, YouTube, Facebook live streams like we're doing right now. As long as it's consistent, and as long as you're towing your overall sort of branding language, right? Let's continue. You want to keep telling your story. Think about any media you consume that has sponsored ads in the mix. You'll hear these ads over and over and over again because that's how it works. Once a consumer is exposed to a storyline or hook enough times, the connection is made. You increase your chances of becoming top of mind with the audience while creating opportunity for engagement. When you're broadcasting, you want to weave your story into every piece of content that goes out, consistently towing that line of who you are, why you're doing this, and how you can help others. Consistently reinforcing your position in business so that when a customer thinks, I need to start a podcast, they look at me. If someone is out there thinking, I need to get in shape, they think of Laura Harrington. Stories can be told in an hour-long audio podcast or 30-second Instagram story. The beauty is you have creative freedom over the content that works for your business. There is no blueprint. Each business is different and each audience is different. So I'm just re-emphasizing that you can create a podcast, throw that term out. You can broadcast however you see fit, whatever is most comfortable to you, right? Especially if you're in that phase of content marketing is new to you, content creation is new to you. You don't think you can blog, you don't think you can do an email newsletter, but you want to do something, and maybe Instagram stories is the easiest thing to do. There's some technical caveats here, like you don't own Instagram platform. It's hard to measure other than the data that they give you. If you really want to reach, you have to pay for it. You always want to own your experience. So you always want to drive people back to your website or your email news list, that kind of thing, newsletter list. But whatever you're comfortable with, focus on that. If it's driving engagement and people are enjoying it, continue to focus on it, okay? Every customer is different, but every market is different, and everybody in that market, your particular market, is different. If you're a restaurant, Instagram is probably great. I mean, if you are providing something that is visual to your consumer, Instagram and imagery, very important. If it's something much more of, you have to educate your customer, you have to bring them up to speed to why, you're the better value in the market or the preferred leader for whatever it is that you're teaching or training on. Well, video and audio, blogging, those methods provide just a better canvas for you to educate your customer, right? Generally, there's a lot of information. You can break it up into multiple pieces. It works. And you can make that argument that even if you were a restaurant, having a blog is also important, right? Ranking for particular terms is very important. Having a podcast as a restaurant is very important because it's keeping the most engaging customers close to your brand, right? Especially if you're a restaurant that has event space, right? There's so much opportunity in that. But we'll get to that in this next piece. Reinforce the call to action or the sale. I know some people are sales adverse. We hate being pushy and we don't want to force someone to buy from us. I get it. Here's the thing about consistently creating content. You don't have to be pushy. You just have to keep asking. Light touches here and there, reminding people how they can do business with you or where they could do business with you. Small nudges to reach out for free consultation or a call to action at the end of each episode to buy your new apparel or whatever it is that you're offering. Whatever the product or service, podcasting and broadcasting can serve as the perfect platform to encourage more sales in a tasteful way. It's a great confidence booster, which is half the battle in sales, because if you're creating truly educational and engaging content for your audience, there's work involved. Once you start to account for all of that work, you quickly realize you want to be compensated for that investment. That's when asking for a sale becomes a lot easier through the natural form of a show or video clip or a blog post. So this is the thing about broadcasting. You are giving yourself the opportunity for the call to action. So one of the hardest things for many new business owners to do is to ask for a sale, to get out there, beat the streets, knock on doors, ask people, will you do business with me? Will you buy my product? It's one of the hardest things to do. I get it, especially if you didn't grow up in sales, but it's also something that, many people are they're building out their product. They're not sure if it's absolutely right yet. Maybe they're just sort of timid to say, hey, this thing that I'm trying to launch into the world, you might shut me down. So it might be an emotional thing, right? They don't want to be offended by presenting this new product or service to a potential customer. But it's much easier to do that by way of call to action. So at the end of every episode, again, saying like, hey, thanks for watching this clip or this video or this podcast. Don't forget you can buy my new hats over at store.mattreport.com. That's where all of the apparel is. And if you want to support the show, great way to get it. Okay. That in itself is a call to action for legitimate apparel for my other podcast. But you kind of get the idea. You can drop these things in these light duty touches along the way, in your broadcasting or content efforts. It sort of breaks the mold of you having to feel like you have to be this pushy salesperson, which by the way, doesn't work anymore. I think we can all agree. And by doing that consistently, it builds up over time. And now you have this catalog of asks that you have put out there, right? So whenever people fall on, content that you created a couple months ago, hey, you have a small sales pitch in there. So you're increasing your odds at doing business. Let's take a look at the last section. My argument to start a real podcast. So all that said, I've let you off the hook up until this point. You can have the creative freedom to broadcast through any means that you want, so long as you follow these 3 steps. You are consistent, you reinforce your brand, you include a call to action. But a real podcast, a real show, is the ultimate hook. Podcasting can cultivate the most engaged listeners that your brand can have. They're listening in the car, in the gym, or while they're cleaning the house. When a new show pops up in their podcast player, they can't hit play fast enough. And maybe, just maybe, they even go to sleep listening to you. While bite-sized video clips or Instagram stories are entertaining, they quickly disappear into the ether. A podcast is evergreen while providing the building blocks to additional content creation opportunities. It's portable content not only in the sense of listening on a phone or a laptop, but the audio clip can be repurposed into many mediums. Repurposed podcasts can be cut into Instagram stories, the storyline for a blog post, or pre-sales warm-up to your business for prospective clients. Think of the podcast episodes as the free product you offer to turn listeners into future customers. At the very least, into your brand advocates that help amplify your message. At the end of the day, I encourage you to start creating content for your business. If you need guidance, you live in the South Coast area, don't forget to join our free content creators group. Call to action. So look, it's a great question. What's the difference between a podcast versus a video series? Well, the technicalities are, depending on how you're doing video, like my YouTube channel or various YouTube channels, I could turn those videos into audio clips. Last week, I did a live stream here with Sarah from Groundwork. I turned that into an audio clip for the podcast. So sometimes if you're doing video, especially if you're doing long form video, you could repurpose that specifically into a podcast. Audio quality and stuff like that, you have to kind of measure. And if you're able to do both, that's even better. But if you started with audio or started with video, it's a great way to build up a collection of video, and also provide content for the podcast. But if you don't want to do either, as long as you're creating content and doing it consistently, you have the opportunity to do whatever you want. I just think that the investment into a true podcast is the best long-term plan, for your content marketing, because it serves many purposes, and it is the most portable piece of content that's out there, because it's much harder for people to drive a car and watch videos, or be at the gym and watch a video, or even clean the house and watch a video. Things are getting a little bit more streamlined now that you can, pointing to my TV that's to the right of me, but now that you can stream video to a television, it's a little bit easier, right, to sort of be sort of having it in the background, paying attention to it while doing other things. But a podcast is undoubtedly the easiest form to move around at all places. Again, you can't read a blog post while you're driving or doing other things. You can certainly listen to a podcast while doing other things, which is, one of the great things about sort of audio. It's probably the most intimate way of doing it. And creating that long form content or podcast, and it doesn't have to be long form. I mean, a podcast can be 5 minutes or 5 hours. It really depends on like where you want to go creatively, as a showrunner, as it were. But it allows you to act in different ways. So it allows you to have seasons. It allows you to have, easier call to actions. It's much more trackable. Again, people can listen to it and repeat it if they want to go back to listen to some great information or joke that you might have told, right? There's a lot of benefits that are hard to, that aren't as tangible as, or not as tangible in the video scene or the blog scene that there are in the podcast. So at the end of the day, if there's enough bandwidth in your business and your content creation efforts, I would definitely say creating a podcast is a great thing to do. That was a weak ending, Matt. Jesus. So anyway, this article, what makes a podcast, hopefully answers that question. If not, I hope it at least gets you to start thinking about it in a new way. This article, with all the data in it, is rather telling. I don't know how many people eMarketers surveyed in this. I'm sure if I dug into that, but the numbers certainly don't. I'm not surprised by these numbers, right? Because right now in the year 2020, they're expecting 78.9 million people listening to podcasts. Again, by 2023, 85.4 million people listening to podcasts. I mean, podcasts are up and coming, and hopefully making the bet, at least from my point of view, that local podcasts, are going to make an impact, right? Giving people the ability to tune into specific information through podcast format for content that they're not going to get anywhere else. So that is the goal, anyway, of Southcoast.fm. If you're not on the email list yet, southcoast.fm/subscribe, join that email list. We send it out every Sunday. It's called Sunday Notes. You can go to sundaynotes.email as well. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes and Google Play. Leave us a 5-star review in iTunes. Share it with friends and family. All right. That's the end of this broadcast. I hope you enjoyed some of this stuff today. We'll see you in the next video.